We made it.
We made it. A couple
Hello.
minutes late. Technical difficulties, but we're here now. How are you?
I am doing really well today. Day by day. Yeah, doing really well today.
Nikki's here sending us like heart eyes and love
Oh,
and kisses.
hi, Nikki. Oh, I miss you, sister. And Linda.
Linda, hi,
Hello.
Linda.
It's so great to be here with you all.
I love being with you in general. So I'm like, the fact that we get to be together and be with all of you is really, really extra special.
So special.
So today we have a few things on the list today. We're going to talk a little bit about power. We're going to talk about energy. Also, hi Linda, also the energy of like when it comes to manifesting in particular, I mean, I think it's manifesting in general, but also manifesting abundance. Like that's a really hot topic, I think, for most people in the spiritual realm is like, how can I do this amazing work and actually get paid to do it? And create like a really beautiful lifestyle and lots of impact. I also am really excited to talk about plants and herb support, like how plants are really helping me because really for the past 4 weeks, I have been upping all of my plant intake. Like I'm just trying to drink and eat and sip all of the high vibrational plants. So I'm excited to get your insight on that as well.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love it so much. Yeah.
So where do you want to begin?
Let's just take a breath together, the two of us, and also if those of you joining us are open to just taking a couple of breaths, maybe more than one. I started with one. Let's move
maybe
to like three breaths together just to take a moment. I think any reminder we get to breathe is important. So let's just take 3 breaths together, letting all of your air out, and then taking a nice deep breath in through your nose. And exhaling, you can make an HA sound, releasing. And 2 more just like that. Nice deep inhale in. And exhale. And then 1 more, just filling up as much as you can. And exhaling out of your mouth. And I'm giggling because I felt our energy shift. And those of you that are here too, like, we're all here. We're here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So where should we begin? You know, I've been talking so much about, you were about to say something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a question that I was sitting with this morning is what is asking for my attention the most? So maybe I ask you that question and we go from there.
I would say if I had to choose a word, clarity is asking for my attention most. So much of what I've been led to practice, share, drink, eat is around finding clarity within myself. Clarity within my body, clarity within my mind, my intuition, my digestion. And for me, that has shown up as implementing a lot more medicinal tea and herbs and making herb tonic and drinking a lot of watermelon juice and ceasing, the intake of alcohol as well as caffeine, which caffeine in this category is more in the line of coffee. I have had a little bit of like chai tea caffeine, which is, as you know, like a lot different of an experience. But clarity, and I would say the past month, has been illuminating because of those practices. And there's just more. There's just more. There's more to know. There's more coming. The awareness that I've had about myself, about my family, about habits that I've had in the past, about the energy from which I was creating from, has been like very illuminating. What would your answer be to that question?
Well, I also want to ask you a little bit more about clarity too. So maybe that's something that we can speak to a little bit more. Well, let me just ask you now, since that's what we were just talking about. What do you find keeps you the most unclear?
Taking things personally.
Can you speak a little more to that?
How much time do you have? So, Missy Sunshine's here. Hi, Missy Sunshine.
Hi, Missy. Oh, love you.
So, I love you too. So, taking things personally for me shows up as like, I guess energetically, like I speak energy. I speak energy and I speak emotion. So like that's how I'm going to describe this. But it's essentially like, metaphorically speaking, taking objects on. It's like having a backpack or 2 grocery bags and like literally putting items in them that are not mine, and then just like carrying them around until one day you have this like sled full of heavy objects and you're just like dragging them across your life. And so for me, that is how I experience taking things personally. And it is such a hard habit to break. It is so hard to break. It is so hard. But that is probably what's in the way the most, because then I also, because I'm in the energy of being cloudy or heavy, I'm attracted to things that kind of add to that instead of improve that. Mm-hmm. So for a while I was attracted to, especially at the beginning of quarantine, like feeling the weight of that uncertainty and that heaviness, I was drawn a lot more to alcohol. I was drawn a lot more to caffeine. I was drawn a lot more just to eating in general, like eating when I wasn't hungry, eating in excess, drinking sometimes in excess. And excess can be like 2 drinks. It can also be 4, it wasn't getting blackout every night, but it was a coping mechanism that was creating more confusion, more cloudiness, less clarity. And then from that state, it was just like this constant attraction of that energy. And so I was never really able to get clear, because if I wasn't taking things personally, then I was like feeling hungover or just like icky from what I was eating. And if I wasn't feeling that, I was taking things personally. And it was just like this back and forth, negative cycle. And then on top of that, trying to like totally pivot my business and rebuild and navigate like the loss of the majority of my income and not being able to see people in person. And so it's just a lot.
Yeah, I really hear you. And it makes so much sense too that the uncertainty brings about those comforting behaviors, those things that kind of actually block us from having more space, not only physically, but emotionally, energetically, mentally. And I find like I've been playing with this myself just since we are in such an uncertain time, and, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, that there's really like a little bit of a shift around viewing the uncertainty as greater space. So instead of coming at it from this place of confusion and fear and scarcity and like not knowing, which is inherently rooted in control, like the need to control, like if I look at that and say, well, actually the uncertainty is a prime opportunity for me to drop into greater space. Like it's essentially clearing the pathway. Like what is there in front of me? Space. That can be scary, or it can be really liberating and freeing. And so, I think with clarity comes also that word clear, like clearing. And I think so many of us have been going through a process of clearing, purging, on all the levels, getting rid of the things that have been weighing us down. And I personally am feeling a bit of a shift too towards lightening up. I think we're all kind of, I don't want to speak for everyone, but many of us are starting to find our groove again, even here in South Carolina where, things are as they are. I don't want to bring in any fear to this conversation. I really want it to feel like a nice little respite from, the stuff that's going on, the drama of the outside world. But yeah, I feel like a lot of us are starting to get our groove within this place of uncertainty, and we're starting to find ways to thrive even when we don't know, what's going to happen next. It's really a learned surrender. Again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I certainly can feel that within myself, like just really embodying the space as much as I can and letting it be an opportunity for presence. And, you asked what my answer to that question would be around like what most needs my attention. And this morning it was really about some practical things in my business, like some energy leaks, but also going deeper than that, because that's kind of boring to talk about updating my website or whatever. Like that's like an ongoing thing.
Entrepreneur life.
I know, but maybe that's a shift too. Maybe I need to really look at it as more exciting, and I won't be procrastinating to do it, like maybe if I really, well, this ties into what I've really been feeling into, which is what am I doing that I feel like I have to do? What are the things that I do just to do, and how can I do more of what I love? Or even if it's things like updating my website, which feels like a pain in the ass, like how do I infuse the energy of love into that? Like how do I tap into my bigger vision of like why it's important for my website to be updated? So I think coming back to even just it's that energy of love, of doing something because I want to, because it's fun, because it's a gift to be able to have a certain level of privilege and freedom within my work, to have a freaking I almost dropped an F-bomb, to have a freaking website in the first place.
You may drop the F-bomb.
Okay.
It's so funny because I relate so much, and the funny part about it is I bet if I was rebuilding your website, I would be having fun.
Totally.
But I'm also rebuilding my website, and I'm like, oh. And so it's like, I'll do it for you. I'd be so happy to do it for you. I'd be like, oh yeah, let me just tell you about Stephanie. And I bet you would do the same thing. Like it's our personal attachment.
Yeah.
To like our own outcome of what it's going to be or what we want it to be. It's like our own attachment, our own shit that keeps us from enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
Because like the action is building a website. But if you were building it for me, you'd be like, oh, Lindsay's so amazing, and la 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 la, and look at this pretty picture of her. Don't you want to work with her? Duh. That's how I would feel if I was building your website. But when it comes to
we need to like hold hands and do each other's websites for at least like we can use that energy in it,
But obviously it's not the action, right? It's like how we view the action. It's the energy we hold inside of the action. It's like the attachments we have. I mean, that's why you and I are in this work, alongside each other, but also separately. We're in this work because we're looking at all of those things. It's like, I can have love in this. And the only obstacle to it is me.
Yeah.
I can have financial abundance. The only obstacle is me.
Mm-hmm.
Which the clarity that I have received over the past month is so strong in that direction. Like, so strong in affirming just that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been aware of and noticing all of the ways that I limit myself, that I limit my breath, that I limit my movement, that I limit my power, through comparison, through, belief, through confusion, even like a lot of what I'm working with and why it's taken me a long time to rebuild a website is because the energy with which I built my business to begin with was very, very different because I was very, very different. I was a very different person. Oh, Hannah's here. I'm in your room for this pretty background and this light.
Oh, hi, Hannah.
I know. I miss her. She's away this week. But the energy that I built my business was in this like lack mentality, right? It was in this, businesses operate this way, and this is how they go, and this is what I have to do. And these are all the confines that I've put upon myself in order to create a successful business, and I wasn't necessarily in myself or in a place of power when I was building it. I was like a baby.
Yeah.
I was a baby just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so now I'm rebuilding. I'm like rebuilding from a place of so much more knowledge, so much more clarity, and also wisdom around like really what works for me and what doesn't, and like how I can work in a way that is sustainable and feeds my soul and makes a big impact while still supporting. So like I put all of that on the creation of this website.
Yeah, I can really relate to that as well. Like I really hear you with that. And I believe actually we started our businesses around the same time.
Did we?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know each other back then, but I believe that it was around the same time. And I actually was kind of reflecting on a similar sentiment recently. Just, I'm in some ways, like, what are the ways that I'm operating my business in the way I did when I first started, when I was literally learning, from ground up. Like I was literally learning everything. Everything. So many tears and so many moments of like wanting to tear my hair out. Just learning how, because I was coming from the world of dance. I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff, any of the things to run a business. So like not only was I educating myself, but I was also like trying to run the business too. And that inherently it created for me a lot of fear, like fight or flight energy, right? And I'm not in that same place now. I've really recognized the reasons why I'm running this business and how to run it in a way that is actually supportive. And what keeps kind of coming up in my mind, I think that maybe we could mention this briefly, but I do feel that there is some systemic pieces to the idea of having a life of freedom, and even maybe that the only thing standing in your way is you. Like I want to just be sensitive to that, because clearly as we're really reckoning with on a grander global scale, there are inherent privileges to us as white women having the privilege and the luxury to have businesses of our own. Now, I will also say, because I remember having a conversation with a client years and years and years ago, like one of my very first clients, and this person was resisting starting their own business. I was working with them on health coaching. This person was really complaining a lot, very much in victim around, the things that she knew she needed to be doing and she wasn't doing. And she really was struggling in the job that she was in. And she kind of assumed, well, if your business is successful, that must mean that you've had a lot of help. And I will say that's not always the case, because I think, in especially the coaching industry, where there are so many life coaches out there, some of them have only had, 3 months of training, others have not had any training at all, and they can, call themselves life coaches and advise on different areas, and that, that's a whole other conversation in and of itself. But people automatically assume that anyone who is life coaching, a lot of people do, that anyone who is life coaching has support or rich parents or something like that. Like that's a theme that I've heard a lot. And that's not always true. I think you and I talked about this a lot. There's part of what weaves into that fight or flight energy, for better or worse, is this tenacity, like this, there's an element of continuing to push, because many of us have not been taught any other way, but pushing and working really, really hard at the risk of our bodies, physically burning out.
Yes.
And so anyway, I'm kind of going all over the map with this, because there are a lot of different things that I would like to say, but to just keep it concise, we are, one of the things that I feel like you do so beautifully is to support people to kind of come back into that nervous system alignment, where we can recognize what it feels like to be in a balanced state and not always in that stressed out place, so that then we can make better decisions. Because I come from a really hard-working background, like dancing. It's like I've talked about this many times. It's such a beautiful art form with a really hard discipline. And when you approach, the way that you run a business with those same sort of, principles, it's really hard.
It works at first.
Yes.
It
exactly.
works so long so that you're like, oh yeah, this is the only way to do it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like exhausted and
you hate like, what you're doing,
hating it again. And you're like, why? But it worked before. So then I've had this experience of feeling trapped by that,
Yeah.
Like if that's the only way, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
Really? So that is a question I'm answering for myself right now. What do I do?
Yeah.
The other thing that wasn't clear when I initially started my business was my message.
Mm-hmm.
Like the work that I really resonate with. I just knew I loved to connect with people, and I was really naturally very gifted at massage and body work and listening. That's really what I call energy healing, is deep listening. Because there's always something that's there, like asking to be heard, but sometimes we have to cultivate a different level of listening in order to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires healing, that requires nervous system reset, that requires cultivating a new skill a lot of times. So that question continues to come up, is like, can I really distill it? Like, can I really get to the source of what I'm here to do and to teach and to be, and create methods of which to do that do not feel so forceful, and like exhausting, you know?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And, something that again, we're in similar places. I think when we're trying to quantify energy, the intangible into tangible, so that, the people that we serve, so that their logical brains can grasp what it is, what is actually, what are they paying for? What exactly, are they getting for their hard-earned money? That can be really challenging. It can bring up a lot of perfectionism because you want to get it right. You want to make sure that you're clear. You want to like encapsulate everything that you do, that like fertile space that you hold in your elevator pitch.
I'm so glad you brought up perfectionism, because like it is a form of control. It's something that I have been navigating the majority of my life. But you also mentioned something called learned surrender. So is that a practice that you use to navigate perfectionism and control? And what does that look like?
I was speaking specifically with learned surrender to this time frame where we've been forced to surrender. So we're learning the practice of surrender day by day, with each shop that closes, each retreat that's canceled. I'm like speaking for myself, like each thing that was on the calendar that got canceled, all of the things that are what we thought were going to happen and didn't, those things that like our ego wants to use to control, like, well, this is on the schedule, my schedule's planned. So yeah, in terms of perfectionism and surrender, like that's something that I'd love to think about even more, or just feel into even more. um, you know you mentioned the support of plants, and plants have taught me surrender more than anything else, particularly medicinal and theogenic plants, having to really surrender in order to not lose your shit. But yeah, perfectionism, I think that especially for women, and especially in our culture, that is that's really ripe. Like that's something that I think a lot of women are challenged by. And I think to tell a perfectionist to surrender is really challenging. You can't go from 0 to 100. You have to find, the baby steps along the way. And, not speaking from any personal experience.
No, no, not at all. Not at
None
all.
whatsoever. But really finding practices of self-compassion and self-kindness, which that is challenging for a lot of the perfectionists that I have worked with. Like, what if I'm nice to myself, then I'm not going to get anything done. I'm going to become like this lazy blob that lies on the couch all day. And these stories, which are also systemic. I just want to bring that to the forefront. Those are also systemic. Like, when we're taught that our bodies are essentially machines, and that we're supposed to be at the same level of output every single day, of course we would think that, being a little bit gentler with ourselves, tuning into the rhythm of our bodies and trusting that, of course we would think that that's not going to be productive, so why should we do it? And um, that's a big thing, that those roots go really deep, I think, for a lot of us. I mean, I have really been thinking about that a lot since the solstice retreat that we led together, Lindsay. One of the things we talked about was, receiving pleasure. And, a lot of people, when they hear pleasure, they think purely sexual, and that's great too. But, we're really talking about the idea of receptivity overall, the idea of what are you doing just because it feels good, like because you love it, because you like it, you enjoy it. And in our culture, where I think that concept is much more present today than it was even 5 years ago, which I also think is the result of many Western women bringing that to light. That there are so many women who are doing amazing work in the realm of pleasure, reciprocity, embodying, more feminine energies of receptivity. So we're shifting as a culture to really see play as productive, to see fun as productive, and it's catching up from I don't know how long, generations of discrediting that.
Well, two things. One, like play as productive. There's like energetic proof of that. It creates a magnetic effect in your auric field. Like when you are experiencing more pleasure, you are happier. And when you are happier, you are more magnetic. People are like, "Hi, what are you doing? I want some. Can I just sit next to you and like hope some of it rubs off on me? Or can I join one of your programs?" Especially if you're an entrepreneur, or if you identify as someone who is like a leader, like, having and accessing that magnetism is a really powerful source of currency.
Yes.
Yes. And I can't remember the second thing I was going to comment to, because as soon as I started talking about energy, I'm like, okay, let's talk about magnetism now. But I think it was around perfectionism and really just, for me, perfectionism is such an internal battle. And, transcending that and, moving toward your potential and moving toward that innate joy that is your birthright, moving toward that is, in many ways, can be a total act of rebellion. It's like you're totally rebelling against all of the ways that you may have thought or limited yourself that you can show up as. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually remembering now what it is you said when you said the expectation to show up in the same way every day. My whole body just like clenched up. I was like, ow. To show up in you expect your body to show up in the same way and like give the same output every day, like, ow, like that physically hurts to hear. It just like is so far removed from what I experience the truth as, and in my cells, in my body, and it is an act of rebellion to say no. Sorry, I'm not sorry. That's not what I was designed for. If we choose to subscribe or open ourselves to the belief that we're innately whole and that we're innately joyful and that we have this total completion within ourselves that requires nothing outside of us, like that is what is true. Mm-hmm. And if we choose to subscribe to that, then there must also be countermeasures taken against anything that's in direct conflict with that.
Yeah, I think about no one takes little girls or little boys. I'll speak to little girls, but nobody takes little girls when they start to be able to talk and move about the world and says, you have been given this amazing source of intelligence and it's called your body. And this is all of the things that your amazing body does. And guess what? Your body is going to be different from day to day. One day you may feel great. Another day you may feel, exhausted. one day you might feel ill in response to something that you ate, and hey, this is really important information. This is how your body is speaking to you. And also, your body just doesn't only speak to you in those ways. Your body speaks to you in pictures, in sensation, in images, in sounds. Like, nobody takes little ones and teaches them how to understand that their body is actually their greatest, I have chills, most powerful ally. And instead, when we're forced to kind of figure it out on our own, it's frustrating. Because, like, if you were trying to have a conversation with someone who spoke a completely different language than you, you'd be banging your head up against the wall. Or maybe not, you just check out. You'd be like, I don't get what you're saying. Like, we can't communicate. Like, I'm done. But I mean, yeah, it's a really important piece of, again, the systemic ways of being, where the church and religion often would, say that the body is bad, the body is sinful, the body is dirty, it's unclean. And the body can be used in those ways, certainly. But that's like the miracle of the human body is so much greater than those things. And when we can tap into that, and really tune into the cycles and the rhythms of ourselves, our emotions, our moods, our energy, like all of that makes a huge difference.
Yes. And like one thing that I definitely want to clarify about, when we're speaking about things in the systemic and especially inside religious structures, is I want to clarify that that is a misinterpretation. I feel that like the truth is, there is a truth that is like known by us all, and that anything that takes us away from that is merely a misinterpretation. So I think like seeing the body as, gross or dangerous or whatever, dirty, is a misinterpretation, a misknowing of what truth was trying to be known. Yes. And
yes, Nikki gets it. She gets it.
Well,
she gets that whole conversation.
Yeah. Nikki, you have taught me so much about this fact. And, the second thing I want to speak to is this experience of women or young girls not being told like what their power is, or not having access or to that wisdom, or not being led in the direction of that wisdom. Like, is that one thing you believe shows up as competition in specific toward other women, or competition even with other men? Like, it's not just women that women compete with, we also compete with men, but there is a very glorified competition with like women against women. And so I ask if it's that misknowing of their own power, or that misinterpretation of, a truth that sources that need or desire or habit of like competing or putting yourself against, judging yourself next to others.
Yeah, I'm like, how do I want to answer this? Because I got so much to say about it. I mean, there's, I could speak to the systemic piece of it as well. So I will say, I've written about this a bit, but, one of the strengths of women is the ability to collaborate and communicate, to co-create. That is innately woman.
So easy.
Yeah. It is one of our greatest strengths. And in terms of, what I've learned and read about the patriarchy, essentially, like, kind of back to the burning times when women were burned for, healers. You and I may have been burned because of the work that we do in the world. And that's not to be woo-woo, that there is like history that proves that, powerful women were not tolerated. And so I believe that there are certainly roots within that competition, that scarcity, that fear that go all the way back historically. So that trauma, as we're learning more and more with the civil rights movement that's happening, that trauma is passed down generationally. So you hear people talk about past lives and things like that, and I think some people might toss that off as woo-woo or new age, but we know now through science that trauma is passed down through generations. And so if we look to history as, and I'm not a historian, if we look to history and the way women would turn against one another in order to protect whatever it was that they were protecting, in order to remain a part of the community and to be safe. I think that there are certainly roots within that around competition. I've really been looking at this a lot within myself. What are the ways that competition or jealousy shows up as a systemic issue within myself? So, if we really look at the ways in which, our power is in collaboration and connection and community. So if that's like one of our greatest strengths as women, and we are finding that we're feeling jealous or competitive, where is the wound? Are we not feeling enough sisterhood, healthy, nourishing, like authentic sisterhood in our lives? Do we need to be working more on ourselves? Like, is there something that we're not taking action on, and so we see someone else doing it and that triggers jealousy? Does she have what I want? And so, and what am I doing to actually get that? Am I sitting, behind my phone, my Instagram screen and judging and hating, being snarky? Or am I really looking at her and saying, whoever she is, that's possible for me too. Wow, yes. Look at that. And that's, I also think that there are a lot of factors that go into how we, view other women. Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we feeling nourished? Are we in a rough emotional spot where it feels like everyone else is having it easy except for us? All of those things come into play.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, yes, expanders. Yes. So that was something I was just about to say. Thank you for that, Sarah. That was something like that is a term called an expander. So like you can see someone who has or appears to have what you want, and you can feel jealous and envious and like shut down by that. And you can also feel expanded to like by that, like that is possible for me. But really what struck me so much about what you just said was kind of turning it back on yourself. Like, am I taking care of myself? I mean, it's so important. And that is really clarity for me this month. And if you're just now joining us, one thing that I'm focusing on this month is clarity. And by this month, I mean the last 30 days. And so that has just been I could just be like, oh, that's so it. Like, yes. Am I taking care of myself? Yeah. Am I manifesting from a wound?
Yeah.
Did that thought or that action or that way of being, did that come from my wound or did that come from me? Mm-hmm. And am I taking care of myself enough to really have access to the truth? Because so much of misalignment takes place when we are not taking care of ourselves. We're not feeding ourselves what we really are desiring to be fed. And that does not just mean food. We don't have supportive structures, or we're not leaning into the supportive structures that are there. We are not resting, or even as simple as saying no. One of the most powerful self-care tools that I have ever come into contact with, especially as someone who identifies very deeply as an empath, is one word: no. That one word has been the most powerful self-care tool. Like no salt bath or bar of chocolate in the whole wide world could do for me what that one word does for me. Because I'm saying no to what's out of alignment. I'm saying no to anyone or anything, whether that be a structure that doesn't have a face or a human being that does. No, I will not show up in the same way every day. And it is unreasonable for me to expect that of myself. No, I will not put my energy in places that does not resource me, that does not come back. No.
Yeah.
And no is also a complete sentence.
Period. No,
which is
period.
another hard one. Like, no, but I mean, thank you. Maybe next time. I mean, like, don't stop asking me. No. Love you. No.
Yeah. That's such a hard one for so many
It's
of
so
us.
good, though. It's so good.
Yeah.
Because what it also means is I'm saying yes to this.
Yeah.
And I'm taking care of myself and my energy at the deepest possible level because I'm not a machine. I'm a human being with blood and with a heart that speaks so loudly. Like I'm saying yes to my humanity. I'm saying yes to my sensitivity. I'm saying yes to myself. Any chance you could say that again? Which part? Which part do you want me to say again? No? But that no is a complete sentence, and that no is the most powerful access
How to
of
say
how
no.
to say no, when to say no. Ooh, how to say no may always be a challenge to a degree, or will definitely be a challenge at first. So like the how is, it's going to spin you around in circles. But the when is when your energy is not being resourced. So when what you're saying yes to isn't giving back to the community and resourcing you in that way.
Without saying, but keep asking me. Maybe it
without
will be
saying,
yes.
maybe it will be a yes.
Yes,
Well,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no, thank you. How to say yes, how to say no when you like might say yes another time. I mean, you could just say that, like, it's not true for me today, but please keep asking. You know, it's not, I have a lot going on in my world this week, this month. Please check in with me again. Because I desire to support you. Say something that's true. I love you and I want you to feel supported by me. Or I love the work that you're doing. You know, just speak something that is true. But it's okay to say no when things are not in alignment. And alignment can be like a day-to-day thing, and it could be a long-term thing. Like it could be a no forever, and that's okay. You know, you could love the work. I could love the work that Stephanie's doing in the world and still say no to invitations to work together. That's possible, and that I don't have to feel anything around that, and she doesn't have to feel anything around that either. You know, I support her by not competing with her. I support her by sending heart emojis. You know, I can support her in so many ways. It doesn't have to look like one way. But yeah, I mean, that is a powerful self-care tool that has been invaluable in my experience, and such a a strong sense of kind of pulling back my energy, because as women, like, we're natural connectors. And so we do go in and spread out. And that can feel really that can be something that really resources us. And it can also be something that doesn't. And so if it doesn't, there is a necessary action to kind of draw everything back in and be like, I need to take a break, or I need to step away and find my center again. Because if all that energy is moving out into those other things and there's nothing moving into you, it's not sustainable. It's not resourced. And whether, even if you were a machine, you would still break down.
Yeah.
Because there's energy moving only in one direction.
Yeah. So good.
I'm looking at the clock and I'm seeing that we have 5 minutes left. So maybe let's tie a few things up. So what's on your heart to say?
A question I have for you. Of everything that we've talked about today, we've talked a little bit about power, a little bit about manifestation, about connection, collaboration versus competition, around boundaries. How does your work support people to step into embodied versions of some of these concepts that we've spoken about? That's a hard question.
It is, but my favorite thing about my work is, and I'm already feeling emotion come up to the surface, is I get to meet people exactly where they're at. And that has been one of the most powerful tools that I've ever learned as a healer. It was something I learned in my first craniosacral therapy class. It was like, it is not your job to have an agenda. It is your job to show up and to meet that human being, that sweet soul, that whole body, exactly where they are. And you go from there. I was treating a client virtually a few days ago, and there was some resistance in moving into this one direction of healing. And she was feeling this energy of like she couldn't move forward. And so instead of being like, well, keep trying, move forward, that's what we're doing. So instead of like forcing her to move forward in that direction, I was like, okay, great, sit still, let's try this way. And so much of my work is talking with the body, talking with that part of yourself that has a direct line of access to your truth, a direct line of access to your soul and to the things that are healthy for you in this moment, exactly where you're at. And so how can we kind of negotiate with the body and negotiate with the resistance, the tension, in order to allow it to experience what it's like to soften, like even if it was like a micromillimeter, because once it feels that experience, it's like, oh, that felt really good. Actually, I would like some more of that. And then it becomes their idea. It becomes the body's idea. It's not an external influence coming from the outside saying, you need this, that, and this, and that, and that's it. It's like coming from the inside. It's your own voice It's your own wisdom, it's your own power that then starts to move you in the direction of what is true for you and what it feels like and what it looks like, and receiving permission from yourself to pursue that direction. Like, that is my favorite part about my work, is that I get to show up without an agenda, and I get to see your potential. You know, because that's one of my gifts as well, is like I can see people, I can penetrate their soul, I can see all the way in, and I can love them the whole way. You know, I'm still working on offering that same energy to myself, which is how I will then resource myself. But as you know, it's often easier to give than it is to receive.
Yeah. You're getting some hearts for that.
It brings up so much emotion because I really love my work. I love connecting. It's like the reason I get out of bed in the morning is to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. You speak directly to the body to support the body to unwind, which then allows all of the other systems, mental, spiritual, emotional, to unwind and take up more space in an integrated and healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and mostly because it's our energy, it's our nervous system, and our emotions that open and close the doors to our power. So if you're able to release an emotion or move forward in the direction of moving through that experience, you open the door to your own power. You open the door to your own truth. It's like the emotions are that kind of gatekeeper. And it's when we hold and harbor that the physical body can become ill.
Yeah.
And the mind as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love you. So we've got like a minute and 40 seconds. Does anyone have a question they want to ask? Like, I love how many of you are here right now. Thank you for listening and being with us. Yeah, all the heart eyes.
Alicia just joined. We're getting ready to hop off, but hi. Oh.
But yeah, we're so available for questions, you know, in this moment. And then also if anything come up for you that you want to ask us about, like send us a DM, send me a DM, because I really want to hear from you. I want to know. I love being asked questions, especially about my work.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. If there's anything that you're curious about that we talked about, send me a DM, send Lindsay a DM. So weird to say DM. Feels feels strange. Just send us a message. We're happy to
Send a message.
support you in whatever way we can.
Or comment. Get that algorithm going. Give us a comment. Give us a share. We definitely want to continue doing these and share, you know, as much as that we can.
Yeah. So if there's anything that you would like us to chat about too, feel free to let us know.